Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Pontiac Enchanté. My name is Carson Becke. I am the artistic director of this series, and this is the first time in a live stream concert that I can't say this is the first time we're doing any kind of live stream concert. So the first concert we did since the pandemic started was at the end of September, where we had a kind of combination audience. We had some people here in the flesh, and we had others viewing like you are now via live stream. So that was our first kind of combination concert. We hosted a concert at the end of October, a two-piano recital that featured only a live stream audience viewing as you are now. So that was our first live stream only concert. So I'm out of firsts. So in a way, it's kind of nice to know that we're now in this rhythm of this very different form of concert presenting. But so welcome back to the Venturing Hills Virtual Concert Hall. A new addition to today's concert was the introduction that you've just seen. We know that one thing that is irreplaceable in our concert experience is actually coming here and seeing the beautiful geography that surrounds this concert venue. As you drive down the driveway, you see the Erdely Escarpment in front of you. As you're driving up the highway, you can see the Ottawa River, and where we are physically and geographically is very important to what we do here musically. So we thought that we would do something to sort of bring you into the space. It's not quite the real thing, but it's something. So I would also just like to say a huge thank you to Ben Stanland for providing the Zoom, sorry, not the Zoom, I've been on Zoom too much this week, the drone footage taken of the property from above that really gives you a sense of where we are. You're all watching this concert on our virtual concert hall platform. Now, at this point, many of you will have done this before, so you know the features that are available to you on that page of our website. But for those of you who are new, and just to give everybody a refresher, I'd just like to take you through a few of the features available to you as using this as a concert viewing platform. So on the left-hand side of your screen, there's a button that you can press to download a PDF version of today's program. I would really recommend doing that for this concert, as especially for the first set of pieces by Vaughan Williams, each of the pieces has a distinct title. And I think knowing the titles to all the pieces will really help the way that you listen to them. So I would download that program. If you click on it, it will open up in a separate window on your browser, so you can flip back and forth between your viewer and the program to find out what's coming next. You can also make sure that we're actually staying on the program and not just playing sort of random pieces. On the right-hand side of the viewer, you'll see a button that says Donate. I'm sure you all know what that button means. If you click on that, it'll bring a screen up in front of the viewer that allows you to make a donation of your choice. We've put in a few suggestions. So $30 is the price of attending a concert here in person. $20 is the price of a student ticket, but leave whatever you're able to leave. Our concerts right now are entirely funded by donations. So please give generously. The donations for the last two concerts were wonderful. We really appreciated the support we got from you. So please consider doing that again and help us keep this concert series going in this very different way. On the actual viewer itself, if you hover over it with your mouse, there's a little square in the bottom right-hand side of the viewer. If you click on that square, it will make the viewer go to full screen. So that will just make your whole viewing experience a little bit more immersive. Also, feel free to juggle around the volume controls. I want to make sure that when you're listening, it's not sort of overwhelming unless you're sort of into that kind of sound effect. And also, I don't want you to have to strain to listen to the very quiet sounds. There are some very quiet moments in this program. So I would recommend raising the volume so that you can really hear all of the details. So those are the things that are available to you in our virtual concert hall, and I hope you enjoy this way of watching this concert. Before every concert that we host here in person, I make a point of thanking all of our series sponsors. And since the pandemic has started and since we've been doing these virtual concerts, it's even more important that I do that, because our sponsors really are the reason that we're able to be presenting these concerts like this now. So back in March, when the first lockdown started happening, I was in touch with all of our series sponsors and said, look, I don't really know what's going to happen this year. We'll do what we can, but I don't know what the season's going to look like. And I was so grateful that not a single sponsor withdrew their support. And so that confidence in what we were doing and that sort of continued support meant that over the summer we were able to retool this space so that we could do these live stream concerts. And it's a big job. There's a lot of things that we had to buy, and we wouldn't have been able to do that without the support of our sponsors. So I would just like to go through the list and thank each of them individually. So to start with, I'd like to thank Mark, Jenna, and Deb Rondell from Rondell Wealth Management at RBC. Mark has been a supporter of the series since the very beginning. He started sponsoring us back in 2009 when we had no clue what we were doing, so it took a big leap of faith for him to jump on board then. And I realized what another big leap of faith it's been to continue that support this year. So thank you so much to Mark, Deb, and Jenna for all that they've done for the series. Marg Campbell has been a supporter of the series for a few years, and she is a wonderful sponsor in that she's at almost every single concert that we host here. And so since we've started doing these live stream concerts, she hasn't been able to be here in person, of course, because of obvious reasons. But Marg, I know that you're watching tonight, and so welcome back virtually. And we always enjoy having you in your seat at the top of the stairs here, and we hope that we can have you back in that seat as soon as possible. So thank you to Marg. Dasha Schenkman is a sponsor since last season. She's not watching tonight because she lives in London in the UK, so that would be a bit of a stretch. I guess it's something like 2 in the morning over there right now, so that would be a serious effort. But she's going to watch our concert tomorrow afternoon, which we've got scheduled for 2 p.m., so 7 p.m. in Britain. So Dasha, thank you for your support, and I'll be able to speak to you more directly at the concert tomorrow. Norton Rose Fulbright have been supporters of the series for a few years. Thank you so much to them for their support. The Desjardins Bank here in Luskville and in Quebec more broadly has been a supporter of the series for quite a few years and has helped us make quite a few facility upgrades. So thank you so much to Desjardins Caisse Populaire. And finally, Bob and Sandra Barber live locally and have been great supporters of this series ever since they moved to Luskville a few years ago. So Bob and Sandra, if you're watching tonight, which I hope you are, thank you so much for your support. I know that live stream concerts are not your favorite thing in the world, but I've said this before, it's the next best thing to being here in person. So thank you so much for your support and your continued support, despite your suspicion of the medium. And I hope you enjoy this concert almost as much as you would if you were here in person. So finally, just a huge thank you again to all of our sponsors and supporters. Aside from our sponsors, putting on concerts in normal times takes a lot of work, and there's a lot of people that make what we do possible. Putting on concerts during a pandemic is even more of a challenge. And so I just want to say a few thank yous to people that have contributed various things to make tonight's performance and all the performances we've done this season work. So you're watching right now via your computer, which we're broadcasting to you over the internet. Internet is obviously now a thing that we have, but in rural locations it's very difficult to get internet that's at a high speed and is dependable. So I would just like to thank Cliff Bellis and Pioneer Wireless for doing everything they've done to make sure that our internet speeds are high enough here to be able to broadcast effectively. So thank you so much to Cliff and Pioneer Wireless. You can see that I'm very well lit right now, and you're not going to see these lights, but we have an excellent setup of lighting here. We don't own these lights. These have been loaned to us very generously by the Mill Road Community Centre in Old Chelsea. In normal times, Mill Road puts on a wonderful set of concerts, both classical concerts, folk concerts, and community-based events. They're not able to put on activities right now, and I'm very grateful to them that they've so generously loaned us their equipment to help us make our shows just that much better. So thank you so much to everybody at Mill Road that's made that possible for us. You'll notice that the sound quality in which you're hearing my voice is almost like you're standing right beside me. And the reason for that is that we have an excellent audio engineer here this evening who is miking up this concert. He mic'd up our last concert and is going to be working with us for the foreseeable future on our live stream concerts. So I'd like to say a huge thank you to Ross Murray for all the expertise and knowledge and equipment that he brings to this and the added level of professionalism that his work gives to our series. I'm not going to demonstrate now, but you'll notice the piano is in immaculate shape in terms of tuning. And so I would just like to say a big thank you to Troy Scharf, who comes to tune the instrument. Troy will come at any time of the day or night. I'm not kidding. Troy's been here at 2 in the morning. If there's been an issue that I've mentioned, he's always said, don't worry, I'll solve it. It's not going to be a problem. So he's always here at the drop of a hat if need be. And so just a huge thank you to Troy and the work that he does to keep this piano in great shape. You're not going to see this person because he's the person making sure that you can see Paul and I tonight, but I'd like to say a big thank you to my co-director, Tate Becke, who is manning the cameras tonight and making sure that what you're seeing is smooth. So Tate's sitting in our booth, juggling back and forth between our different cameras. In fact, actually, Tate, do you want to show our audience tonight the different camera angles that we have available? So we've got 4 different cameras. There's one camera that obviously you've been looking at that's very close on me. We've got a very close camera for Paul, so you can see everything that he's doing on his cello. We've got a shot that kind of gets both of us in the picture. And then we've got a higher up camera that lets you make sure that I'm not making any mistakes on the keyboard. So we've got all those ways for you to keep track of what's happening here tonight. So thank you to Tate for managing that and all the knowledge that he brings to that side of the table. And finally, a big thank you to my parents, whose property we're on right now. They allow us to do these concerts here. It's not easy bringing people to your property during a pandemic, so I'm grateful that they've continued to support what we do, and I'm really grateful to them that they've allowed us to use this space for our concert series. So finally, thank you to my parents, and thank you to everybody that I've mentioned for making this happen. In terms of keeping in touch with us, if you were here in person, I would say please fill out one of the forms at the back of the hall and leave us your email, because the most effective form of communication for us to get information to you is our emailing list. However, that's actually easier in this format. If you look at your screen, there's an orange button on the top of our website page. It's on all of our pages on our website that says join our mailing list. So if you click on that now, if you're not a member of our mailing list, I would highly recommend clicking on that and leaving us your email. We send out emails before every concert, letting our audiences know what's coming up, who's playing, any special features that might be happening. It's especially important now because we don't know until a few days in advance whether we're going to be able to admit people to our concerts in person or whether it's going to be live stream only. So if you're new to this series, first of all, welcome. But I would encourage you to join our emailing list. You can also follow us on Facebook. If you search Pontiac Enchanté Concert Series, we have a page and we post updates there about what's coming up next as well. So now I would just like to introduce my partner in crime this evening, cellist Paul Marleyn. Paul is known to many people in the Ottawa community. He's professor of cello at the University of Ottawa. He is British, he's from London, so we felt that a British program would be appropriate, not just because of his British heritage, but also because I studied in the UK, so we have that heritage in common. Before moving to Canada, Paul was the principal cellist of the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic. He moved over here and became professor of cello at the University of Manitoba. He runs a chamber music festival in Winnipeg called the Agassiz Chamber Music Festival, and like I said, he's now professor of cello at the University of Ottawa. So I'd like to welcome Paul to say a few words about our first set of pieces, and enjoy tonight's concert. Thank you.
So I'm delighted to be here with Carson and you all virtually. The first piece, as Carson just mentioned, is 6 Studies in English Folk Song by Vaughan Williams. It was written in 1926 at a time when, as my music shows me, you could buy a piece for cello and piano for 1 shilling and 3pence. So that's 9 pence or 9 cents. I wonder what you could buy today with 9 cents in terms of music. But as Carson mentioned, the titles of these 6 songs, really, studies or songs, are quite poetic. The first one is Lovely on the Water. The second, Spurn Point, which is celebrating a lighthouse in Yorkshire on a point. Then there's Van Diemen's Land. Van Diemen's Land was Tasmania. The Lady and the Dragon is the next. Then She Borrowed Some of Her Mother's Gold. And finally, As I Walk Over London Bridge. So you can see they're very evocative titles and they're very evocative songs. I was doing a bit of research and discovered that the song Van Diemen's Land is about a convict who, not a convict, a poacher, a man who was doing a little bit of poaching to help to feed his family, and he was unfortunately caught doing that and convicted for poaching. And the punishment in England in those days was you would be shipped as a slave to Tasmania to endure forced labor. So rather tough for poaching. Anyway, it's a lovely song. The lyrics are quite beautiful, but as Vaughan Williams shows us, they work beautifully for cello and piano. So there's six movements, and just one other point that I'd like to mention: Vaughan Williams collected these songs on folk song collecting holidays in the British Isles in the 20s, and that was actually a pastime that was quite common amongst 20th century composers. For example, Bela Bartok and Zoltan Kodály together would go on folk song collecting trips in Romania, Transylvania, and Hungary at around the same time. So a lot of composers right across the world actually were going on similar trips, and you can see the fruits of that in this beautiful set. Vaughan Williams takes the folk songs and he elaborates on them, so he uses them as a muse for his creativity. So the first one is Lovely on the Water, and I hope you enjoy them as much as we do.
6 studies in English folk song. So we're going to continue the program now with a sonata for cello and piano by Frank Bridge. So Frank Bridge, with the name Frank Bridge, it's actually a very appropriate name for this composer because he was kind of a bridge between two very different worlds and two very different ways of composing. He had his education in the Victorian era, very, very conservative musical education, and wrote music that sounded a lot like a composer like Elgar is somebody that I think many of you will be familiar with. But then during the First World War, Bridges' ideas changed. He was a staunch pacifist, was deeply affected by the events of the war, and sort of felt that art could really never go back to the place that it was before the war, and that something had happened in the world, and that meant that we can't just keep doing what we're doing. We really need to reflect what's going on artistically as well. So Bridges' whole way of writing music and his whole way of thinking about music changed during the First World War. And if you were to listen to a piece that Bridge wrote near the end of his life in the late 30s versus a piece that he wrote when he was a student, so let's say around 1900, I bet a lot of money that you wouldn't say they were by the same composer. His style changed so drastically. And this cello sonata is a particularly interesting piece because it sits right on the middle of that pendulum. So he wrote this piece between the years of 1913 and 1917. So began it just before the war started and wrote it through the majority of the First World War. And so the first movement sounds a lot like a romantic piece. It's got very, very lush, beautiful themes, soaring melodies, everything that you would expect from that kind of English composer. And then the second movement does something completely different. And again, even within this piece, if I were to ask you, do you think these pieces are by the same person? There are sections where it would be very difficult to say yes. It's just such a drastically different style within the same piece. And so you'll notice in the second movement that the whole kind of direction and form of the piece kind of changes. The standard sonata form would be in 3 movements. His second movement is kind of an amalgamation of all the things that would have made up traditional second and third movements. He goes back and forth between very fast, kind of frenetic sounding music, and then very slow, reflective music, and some deeply sad and disturbing music as well. A moment that I think is particularly touching in the last movement that I'd like you to listen out for, there's this sort of moment of stasis. The piano's doing almost nothing, and the cello introduces this very beautiful tune, very quietly. I haven't been able to locate the source of this, but to me it sounds like it must be a folk song of some kind. So we thought that the bridge between Vaughan Williams' folk songs and then this sort of slightly folky element in this piece could be interesting. But it sounds like a far-off memory of an old folk song, almost like somebody can't quite remember how the tune goes, but they have most of it. And it's sort of surrounded by these very ethereal chords in the piano that are quite dissonant. And to me, that moment sort of sums up this sort of bleak new world, taking over the kind of world order and looking back at things that Bridge would have remembered as very beautiful and very important, and sort of seeing that those things can no longer exist in the same way based on what's happening at the moment. So here is Frank Bridge's Sonata for Cello and Piano in D minor in 2 movements. Thank you. So to take a small break, we're going to hand you over now to something that we did a little bit earlier this week. One of the challenges, but also opportunities of these live stream concerts is the intermission. It's kind of nice to have no intermission, but at the same time, it's sort of nice for us to take a break mid-concert. And I think also as a listener, it's nice to have a rest after a piece like that. You need something else before you jump into some other big pieces. So in order to deal with that, we've put together over the past few concerts a series of interviews with people either playing in the concert, talking a little bit about their artistry, the things that they do, the program, or people related to it. So at our last concert, we had Dmitri Alexeyev, a Russian pianist, who made the arrangement of Stravinsky's Firebird that we played in the concert. We talked to him on Zoom a little bit about his arrangement and his ideas, why he did it. And so today, we've got a special guest for you. This is David Strange. David is an emeritus professor at the Royal Academy of Music and was Paul's teacher. David has some fascinating stories about the piece that we're going to play for you after this little intermission. So I hope you enjoy our chat with David, and we'll see you in about 15 minutes for Benjamin Britten's Cello Sonata. Thank you. Welcome everybody to this interview. You've just heard our performance of Frank Bridges' Cello Sonata. And before we play Benjamin Britten's Sonata in C for you, we have a very special guest with us today. Paul and I are very happy to welcome Professor David Strange, who is an emeritus professor of the cello at the Royal Academy of Music and has really done everything that you could do as a cellist in Britain. He was the principal cellist of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, of the London Philharmonic Orchestra, of the Covent Garden Opera House Orchestra, and was one of the founding members of the Nash Ensemble, which is still one of the premier chamber ensembles in Britain today. And David is joining us today from his house in Edinburgh. So David, welcome to Pontiac Enchanté, and in a way, welcome to Canada.
Thank you very much. Great pleasure. And wonderful to see you both again after all this time.
Yeah, in a way, this whole situation with distance between people and travel restrictions has kind of forced us to use other technologies and other means of communication. And in a way, I mean, this situation probably wouldn't have happened had our concert series been going on in normal times. So it's sort of a nice hidden opportunity that we're able to do this today.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
David, we wanted to ask you some questions. First of all, centered around Benjamin Britten, because of course Britten was one of the arguably the most important composer in Great Britain at the end of the 20th century. And in one of your many capacities that you worked as a cellist in London, you must have had some interactions with Britten. So could you maybe tell us a little bit about how you knew him and any memories you might have had of Benjamin Britten as a musician and as a person?
Well, I first played for Britten in 1965, which is a long time ago. And at that time, I'd started playing with the Philharmonia Orchestra. And in 1965, there was recording sessions of the Sinfonia da Requiem of Britten with him conducting. And I can remember clearly him working with the orchestra. That was the first time I came across him. And I was so much in awe of this great man. Because by this stage, he was coming towards the end. I think he died in 1963, was it? No. I
think 73 or 74, somewhere in
there. No, he died in 76, sorry.
Okay.
So all the big pieces had been more or less written, except for the Cello Symphony at this time. And he was just a wonderful person. You've all seen photographs of him. He was immaculate, with not a hair out of place and all that sort of thing. And that's the way he conducted. Really perfectly. And yet there was so much emotion in what he was doing. And he demanded the highest possible level of performance, even though he was totally friendly with the whole orchestra and got on Christian name terms. Especially, he knew all the English chamber orchestra at that time as personal friends.
Wow.
He was just a wonderful man. His musicality was so clear in what he was doing. And I played a few years later, I briefly joined the English Chamber Orchestra. and we recorded 2 Mozart symphonies with Ben. Mozart 40 first, and then 38. That was 1968, 69. And his Mozart was unbelievable. I can't ever remember anyone else coming close to it. And when he had that orchestra, which was his orchestra, it was just incredible. He did nothing. He stood there, and he certainly wasn't a maestro. You know, because so many conductors nowadays are maestros, but he was just an ordinary sort of chap who didn't want any special treatment, but music was oozing out of him. It was such a privilege.
Wow. How would you describe his rehearsal process? Like, was he very demanding with orchestras, or was he sort of happy to let them kind of play?
No, he was demanding, but in a way that he didn't seem to be.
Right.
Does that make sense? Some conductors, but no, he was always smiling and kind and whatever. He wanted everything right, no question, and would rehearse detail and all that if it wasn't. But generally speaking, he was thinking of the umbrella from the beginning to the end, you know?
David, I guess we look back at Britten as a seminal compositional voice of the 20th century. But of course, so many composers had the reception that their music wasn't always as enthusiastically received during their lifetime. I'm curious, what was your reaction to his music as it came out, and how did audiences and critics receive his music?
Well, as I said, I first met him in 1965. By which time he'd composed the majority of all the big pieces, the operas, symphony, whatever. And by that time, he was so well known in the country, and he was admired and loved and whatever. So I have no idea what happened before that. And the only 2 premieres I heard, I was still living in Ireland and not a student as yet, was in 1961, the Cello Sonata. And I heard that on the radio with him and Slava.
Oh, yeah.
I remember because thinking, my goodness, all these tricks. I thought, nobody else is ever going to be able to play these. You know? Whereas now everybody plays it, but in those days, nobody played it because it was considered too difficult.
Oh, you know? I agree, David. I don't think anybody can play it even these days. It's only Slava, one or two people.
You can play it, yeah. But then the one which did cause an absolute sensation was the War Requiem from Coventry Cathedral in 1962. And that was quite something because of the forces and because of the Wilfred Owen poems. And I saw that on TV, and it was just magical, incredible. And wow. the reviews and the notices in the press about that was quite something. You know, that was such a special piece to him.
So you mentioned the Cello Sonata, which is just perfect. And of course, Slava Rostropovich and Britten were close personal friends. So this sonata was written for Rostropovich, I believe, as a kind of tribute and maybe celebration of their friendship, and also the incredible cello playing of Rostropovich. Yeah, of course, one of the greatest cellists of all time, certainly of one of the greatest of the 20th century. Did you ever have a chance to work with Slava? Do you know him personally at all?
Oh, I know him personally. I knew him personally, but only by playing in the orchestra when he recorded. Okay. He played concerts. And then at the times he came to EUIO, which was wonderful when he was conducting. And you know what EUIO was like. It was a 2-week rehearsal period and then concerts. And I was always in those days the one to be left into the second week, and I would stay and have to look after him. And you can imagine we had a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's so many crazy stories about him being a party animal and just never sleeping and just, crazy.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of truth in it, but I'm not going to say it.
I was also fortunate to spend a little bit of time with him towards the end of his life. But I wonder if you could tell us what it was like experiencing him kind of coming to London the first time, if you were in London at that time, and his performances, the impact he had on the cello world and the London world.
It was incredible because early on in his career, as he did with the LSO, he performed every single cello concerto there was. And I think that was probably about I can't remember, but probably about 1965 or something. Okay. And that was quite a feat to go through everything.
Oh, that's when he played all the concertos in 9 days?
Something like that, yes.
Yeah, I heard about that. It sounded incredible. 27 concertos in 9 days.
Right. Yes, right.
Yeah.
God.
I wish I heard that.
Times 2 a day, it was just incredible.
Well, so I wanted to ask you about your relationship with the Cello Sonata specifically, and I'm guessing, have you played the piece yourself?
Oh, years ago, yes, years ago.
And so you've played it, you've taught the piece. What, in your many years kind of living with the piece, what are some of your thoughts about it? Has teaching it changed your perspective on it at all?
Well, on the piece, no. For me, there is one very important thing about the Cello Sonata. In 1945, I think, he wrote Peter Grimes, the opera. Now, that opera, for me, is the finest opera written in the 20th century and one of the finest ever written. And one of the joys when I moved to Covent Garden Orchestra was that I did a couple of runs of that with Colin Davis conducting. And when I hear the Cello Sonata, when I played it, so much of that is from Peter Grimes.
Right.
And especially the slow movement, because in the opera, I'm sure you know it, but the townspeople are against Peter Grimes because he allegedly killed his apprentice. And that's the basis of the whole East Anglian story. And he got in such a state about all this that nobody would leave him alone, that he decided to go out to sea in his boat, a little boat. And he went out to sea, pulled the plug, and the boat sank with him. And the build up to this is incredible in Peter Grimes. And exactly the same thing happens in the Cello Sonata, the second movement. And I can always hear Peter Pears screaming like Peter Grimes when I hear that piece, or I used to play it in the slow movement. And that's really, I must have talked to Paul about this, but it's such a special moment. And what I say to all students, if you want to learn how to play this sonata, get a DVD of Peter Grimes.
So, David, of course, you well know that I had the pleasure of working with you, first of all, as a member, when I was a member of the National Youth Orchestra of Great Britain, and you were the beloved cello coach, and you were very much the beloved cello coach. Later, I was your student at the Royal Academy of Music, and then later, after that, as principal cellist of the European Community Youth Orchestra, where you were the adored cello coach. I have so many wonderful memories of those times. Then I remember the even for my first audition for a principal cello job, I called you, and that was for the principal cello position of the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra. And then I called you actually from my grandma's house the day I was offered the principal position. And in every situation, as your student, when you were coach of the National Youth Orchestra, you gave me indispensable advice that I still cherish to this day. I remember a bunch of things that you said, and I remember exactly when. And they were incredibly important moments in my life in so many ways. And, I imagine it's the same for many, many of your students. And also, I look back sometimes those years when I must have been pretty naive, and I know I said and did some incredibly stupid things. And you must have had to suffer that. And I wonder, like, how is it you managed to be so kind and understanding and supportive of your students when they're making missteps in their life? You always just manage to just kind of gently guide me in the right direction. It amazes me still to this day.
Well, you were such a wonderful person, Paul, right from I first knew you. You must have been about, what, 14 or 15?
Yeah.
Something like that. And then you went off and everything was perfect about you. I can't understand why you're saying it wasn't, but you were such a wonderful player and wonderful person. And that's what matters.
Well, maybe I should.
We all do little things in different ways. And looking back, we all make mistakes, but at the time, they're not really mistakes. One learns from it all the time.
Well, that's true.
One learns. Yeah. And then one tries to pass it on, and, it's difficult. But you were wonderful. But thank you for saying that. It's so much appreciated.
Well, yeah. David, it's been so great to chat to you about all this stuff today. The legacy that you've left kind of all over the world with so many students is really quite phenomenal, and also just all the memories and thoughts that you have about Britten, about Rostropovich, have just been such a pleasure to listen to today, and I think it really changed the way that I think about the piece and the music, and can't wait to now play the piece. So thank you so much for your time today.
And pleasure. But one other important thing I forgot was that Britten studied with Frank Bridge.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So the Frank Bridge sonata was very important to Britten, as was the Frank Bridge variations, which he wrote later on.
Yeah.
So therefore, that connection is fantastic.
Yeah.
The Britten sonata is absolutely perfect.
Well, I think we could probably do this whole interview again about Bridge, but I think our audience might want to hear some music now.
No, I didn't know Bridge. I'm not quite old enough for that.
No, I wasn't.
Anyway, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, thank you all so much for listening to us this evening, and I hope you've enjoyed this program of English music that really took us from Vaughan Williams and sort of foundational English folk song through Bridge and his sort of transitional period through the First World War, and then finally to Benjamin Britten's Cello Sonata of 1961. So it really was kind of a voyage through the first half of the 20th century in British music. We'd like to leave you now with a very short encore. This piece itself needs no introduction. I'm not going to tell you the name of it, but you may not have heard it in this version before. Like Vaughan Williams, Benjamin Britten was an avid collector of folk songs. He would go, as Paul said, on these folk song collecting holidays where he would essentially walk around, get people to sing to him, and anything he liked he would notate. And so you can buy these incredible volumes, like this thick, full of folk songs that Benjamin Britten wrote down and then wrote these incredibly inventive piano accompaniments to. So here is one of these folk songs with Benjamin Britten's piano accompaniment. So again, thank you so much for being with us tonight. If you liked this program and you just can't wait to hear it again, well, good news for you is that we're playing it tomorrow. So you can join us here again in the virtual concert hall on the Pontiac Enchanté website tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. So we'll leave you with this for tonight, and thank you very much.